You deserved it, my husband said after our son's funeral. My chest froze, but I didn't answer. I just nodded as if broken. That night, I walked into the bank. I emptied our joint account, every last dollar. He never saw the payback coming. But then he tried to kidnap our second child. My name is Rebecca, and I'm about to tell you how a mother's grief became a mother's rage, and how that rage saved my surviving daughter's life. It was a Thursday when we buried our 4-year-old son, Ethan. Leukemia had taken him after a 2-year battle that drained every ounce of fight from our family. Well, from me and Ethan. My husband, David, he checked out emotionally about 6 months into the diagnosis. This is taking too long, he complained when I told him about another round of chemo. When is this going to be over? Not, when will Ethan get better? When will this be over? I should have seen the signs then. The funeral was small. David had insisted on that. No point in making a big production, he'd said. The kid suffered enough. The kid. He called our son the kid, like he was some stranger's child who'd wandered into our lives by accident. I sat in the front pew of the church, holding our 6-year-old daughter Emma's hand. She was wearing the black dress I'd bought her just for this day, a dress no mother should ever have to buy for her child. Emma kept looking around, confused. Where's Daddy? She whispered. David was outside, smoking. He'd taken up smoking again the day we got Ethan's terminal diagnosis. Said it helped with the stress. When he finally came back inside, reeking of cigarettes and something else. Whiskey, I realized. He slumped down beside us without a word. The pastor spoke about Ethan's courage. About how even at 4 years old, he'd faced his illness with more bravery than most adults could muster. About how he'd asked the nurses to take good care of the other sick kids, even when he was too weak to lift his head. I cried through the entire service. Emma cried too, though I don't think she fully understood that Ethan wasn't coming home. David sat there like a stone, checking his phone. At the graveside, I watched them lower my baby's tiny casket into the ground. Emma threw in a handful of dirt and whispered, "Bye-bye, Ethan. I'll save you some cookies." I threw in Ethan's favorite stuffed elephant, the one he'd clutched through every chemo session. "Mommy loves you, sweetheart," I whispered. "Forever and always." David threw in nothing. Said nothing. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. After the service, people came back to our house. Our neighbors had organized everything: sandwiches, casseroles, flowers. David disappeared into his home office and didn't come out. I spent the afternoon accepting hugs from people who didn't know what to say. He's in a better place now. God needed another angel. At least he's not suffering anymore. Emma stayed close to me all day, clutching my leg whenever strangers tried to talk to her. She was scared, confused, processing the loss of her little brother in the way only a 6-year-old can. By evening, everyone had gone home. The house felt impossibly quiet without Ethan's laughter, without the sound of his toy cars racing across the hardwood floors. Emma was exhausted. I carried her upstairs, helped her brush her teeth, and tucked her into bed. "Mommy," she said as I was turning off her light, "is Daddy sad about Ethan too?" The question hit me like a physical blow. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her father had emotionally abandoned the family months ago? "Daddy is sad in his own way, sweetheart," I lied. "Okay," she said, but she didn't look convinced. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" I sat beside her bed, stroking her hair until her breathing became deep and even. She looked so small in that big bed, so vulnerable. I thought about how much she'd already lost, and how much more she might lose if I didn't figure out how to hold our family together. When I finally went downstairs, David was in the living room, drinking whiskey straight from the bottle and staring at the wall. "How are you holding up?" I asked, sitting down across from him. He looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize. Cold, distant, almost hateful. "How am I holding up?" he repeated. "How do you think I'm holding up? Our son is dead, we're broke from medical bills, and I'm stuck in this house with..." He gestured vaguely at me. This what? This disaster. This mess. This life I never wanted. The words hung in the air between us like poison. I felt something crack inside my chest. "David," I said carefully, "we're both grieving." "We're both." "No," he cut me off. "You're grieving. I'm done. I've been done for months. Do you have any idea what it's like, watching your son die inch by inch, knowing there's nothing you can do? Do you know what it's like having to pretend to care about get-well cards and prayers, and all that bullshit when you know it's hopeless? He was your son, I whispered. He was sick from the day he was born, David said, taking another drink. Always something wrong with him. Always needing attention, needing medicine, needing. And you. He looked at me with disgust. You enabled it. You made it worse by treating him like he was made of glass. I stared at my husband, the man I'd been married to for 8 years, the man who'd held my hand in the delivery room when both our children were born, and realized I was looking at a stranger. The medical bills bankrupted us, he continued. The insurance barely covered anything. I had to take out loans, max out credit cards, borrow against my 401k. All for treatments that didn't even work. We had to try, I said. He was our child. He was already gone, David snapped. The doctors knew it 6 months ago. You knew it too, but you kept pushing for more treatments, more specialists, more hope. You dragged it out and made everyone suffer longer. The room was spinning. I couldn't breathe. David, stop. Please. You want to know the truth, Rebecca? The brutal, honest truth. He leaned forward, his face twisted with something that looked like hatred. You deserved it. The words hit me like a physical slap. What? You deserve to lose him, David said, his voice steady and cold. You were a terrible mother. You smothered him, babied him, made him weak. Maybe if you'd been stronger, maybe if you'd prepared him better for the real world, he would have been strong enough to fight the cancer. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't even cry. And now look at us, he continued. Broke. Destroyed. Emma's going to grow up messed up because of all this drama you've created. But hey, at least you got to play the martyr mother for 2 years, right? At least you got all that sympathy and attention. I stood up slowly, like I was moving through water. Where are you going? David asked. To check on Emma, I said quietly. Don't wake her up with your crying, he called after me. I climbed the stairs to Emma's room and stood in her doorway, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, innocent, unaware that her father had just told her mother that she deserved to watch her son die. I closed Emma's door and went to our bedroom. David's words kept echoing in my head. You deserved it. You deserved it. You deserved it. I sat on the edge of our bed and tried to process what had just happened. My husband, my partner, my supposed co-parent, had blamed me for our son's death, had told me I deserved to lose my child, but underneath the shock and pain, something else was growing. Something cold and calculating. Because here's what David didn't know. I'd been managing our finances throughout Ethan's illness. I knew exactly how much money we had, where it was, and how to access it. David had been hiding money, while I'd been selling my jewelry and taking out loans to pay for Ethan's treatments. David had been squirreling away cash in accounts he thought I didn't know about. Money that could have paid for better treatments, experimental therapies, anything that might have given Ethan a fighting chance. But David had decided our son wasn't worth the investment. I waited until I heard David stumble upstairs and collapse into the guest bedroom. He'd been sleeping there for months, claiming my crying and tossing and turning kept him awake. Then I got dressed, kissed Emma's forehead, and drove to our bank. The night deposit area was well lit and empty. I used the ATM to check our joint account balance, $47,000. Money from David's bonuses and tax returns that he'd been hoarding while I scraped together coins to buy Ethan's prescription medications. I withdrew every last dollar. The ATM only allowed $500 per transaction, so it took 94 separate withdrawals. I stood there for over an hour, methodically draining the account that David had been so protective of. When I was done, I had a bank envelope stuffed with $47,000 in cash, and our joint account had a balance of $0.00. I drove home, hid the money in Ethan's old toy box, the one David never touched because it was too depressing, and went to bed. The next morning, David came downstairs hungover and grumpy. Where's breakfast? He asked. I'm not making breakfast, I said calmly. Make your own. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. What's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me. I'm just not cooking for someone who thinks I deserve to watch my son die. David's face flushed. Jesus, Rebecca, I was drunk. I was grieving. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said, not looking up from my coffee. You meant every word. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have said that. But you have to understand, I've been under a lot of pressure. How much pressure? I asked. What? How much financial pressure? Exactly how much? David shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. A lot. The medical bills, the loans. What about the $47,000 you've been hiding in our joint account? David went completely still. What are you talking about? The money you could have used for Ethan's treatments. The money you saved instead of spending on experimental therapies that might have saved our son's life. Rebecca, that money is for emergencies. For Emma's future. We can't just what? We can't just try to save our dying child. Those treatments wouldn't have worked anyway, David said defensively. The doctor said they might help. You decided they weren't worth the money. David's face was getting redder. I was trying to be practical. Someone had to think about our family's future. Our family's future, I repeated. You mean Emma's future. Because you'd already written off Ethan. That's not. It is fair, I said, standing up. And since you're so concerned about being practical, I made a practical decision too. What kind of decision? I withdrew all the money from our joint account last night. Every penny. David's mouth fell open. You what? $47,000, I said calmly. It's gone. You can't do that. David shouted. That's theft. That money belongs to both of us. Actually, legally, it belongs to both of us, which means I have just as much right to it as you do. And I decided to take it. Where is it? David demanded. Somewhere safe. Rebecca, you bring that money back right now, or I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said. Call them. Explain to them how your wife stole money that was legally half hers after you told her she deserved to watch her son die. David stared at me, and for the first time since Ethan's diagnosis, I saw something that wasn't indifference in his eyes. I saw fear. You're being crazy, he said. Grief is making you crazy. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly. David spent the morning on the phone with the bank, with lawyers, with anyone who might tell him he could force me to give the money back. But our joint account meant joint ownership. I hadn't committed a crime. Around noon, he came to find me in the laundry room. Okay, he said, his voice artificially calm. Let's talk about this like adults. I'm sorry for what I said last night. I was drunk and hurting and I lashed out. But taking the money isn't going to bring Ethan back. No, I agreed. But it might help Emma. Help Emma how? I'm setting up a college fund for her. Money that you can't touch, can't spend, can't hide from me when you decide she's not worth the investment either. David's mask slipped for just a moment. That's not. I would never. Wouldn't you? You gave up on Ethan. What happens when Emma gets sick, or needs therapy to deal with losing her brother, or wants to do activities you think are too expensive? What happens when you decide she's too much trouble too? I'm her father, David said. You were Ethan's father too. We stared at each other across the laundry room, and I realized our marriage was over. Had been over for months, maybe years. I'd just been too scared and too tired to admit it. I want the money back, Rebecca. I know you do. I mean it. This is my final warning. Or what? David didn't answer, but something cold flickered in his eyes. That night, I called my sister Patricia and asked if Emma and I could stay with her for a few days. Of course, she said immediately. What's wrong? I told her everything. About David's cruel words, about the hidden money, about the growing feeling that my husband had become someone I didn't recognize and couldn't trust. Pack a bag, Patricia said. Come tonight. But when I went to get Emma, her room was empty. Her bed was still made. Her stuffed animals were lined up on her dresser, just like always. But Emma was gone. I ran downstairs, calling her name. David was in the living room, sitting in his chair with a glass of whiskey, looking completely calm. Where's Emma? I demanded. She's safe, he said without looking at me. Where is Emma? Somewhere you'll never find her unless you give me back my money. My blood turned to ice. David, what did you do? I did what I had to do. You want to play games with our family's financial security? Fine. But I have something you want too. She's your daughter. She's my leverage. David said, finally looking at me. $47,000, Rebecca. All of it. Or you'll never see Emma again. You're bluffing. You wouldn't. I already have. David pulled out his phone and showed me a text message. Package delivered safely. Awaiting further instructions. Who did you give her to? I was shaking, trying not to scream. Friends who understand that sometimes a father has to make hard choices. They'll take good care of her, don't worry. She thinks she's going on a fun sleepover. David, bring her home. Right now. This isn't about money anymore. It was always about money. David shouted, standing up. Everything is about money. Ethan's medical bills, Emma's future, our mortgage, our lives. And you threw away our security because your feelings got hurt. I threw away nothing. That money should have gone to saving Ethan. Ethan was already dead. The treatments were just prolonging the inevitable. But you were too selfish to see it. I stared at my husband and realized he wasn't just cruel. He was dangerous. Bring Emma home, I said quietly. Give me the money. I'll call the police. And tell them what? That your husband arranged a sleepover for your daughter. She's not missing, Rebecca. She's visiting friends. Friends who happen to live in another state where it might be very difficult for local police to find them quickly. My knees almost gave out. Another state. He'd taken Emma across state lines. This is kidnapping, David. This is parenting. I'm protecting Emma from a mother who's having a mental breakdown. I'm not. Aren't you? You stole our life savings. You're acting erratic, paranoid. Any judge would agree that Emma is safer away from you right now. I realized David had thought this through. This wasn't a spontaneous decision made in anger. This was planned. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Since you made it clear you couldn't be reasonable. Since you decided to prioritize your emotions over our family survival. Ethan was our family. Ethan was a lost cause. Emma is our future. And I won't let you destroy her life the way you destroyed his. The words hit me like a slap. David wasn't just abandoning our dead son's memory. He was rewriting history to make me the villain. You have until tomorrow night, David said. All $47,000, plus the interest you cost me by withdrawing it early. $50,000 total. I don't have $50,000. Then you better figure out how to get it. Because if you don't, Emma starts a new life with a new family who can actually take care of her. You can't do this. She's my daughter too. She's my daughter, and I'm making the decisions now. The way I should have been making them all along. David finished his drink and headed for the stairs. Oh, and Rebecca? If you call the police, if you try to find her, if you do anything except get me my money, Emma disappears forever. My friends have very specific instructions. He paused at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at me. You wanted to know what happens to people who cross me? Now you know. I waited until I heard David's bedroom door close. Then I ran to the kitchen and threw up in the sink. My daughter was gone. My husband had kidnapped my daughter to force me to give him money. But David had made a critical mistake. He thought I was the same broken woman who'd been nodding along to his cruelty for months. He thought grief had made me weak and stupid. He was wrong. I went to Ethan's room and pulled out the toy box where I'd hidden the money. $47,000 in cash. David's ransom demand. But I also had something else. Something David didn't know about. When I'd been managing our finances during Ethan's illness, I discovered David's other secret accounts. Not just the joint account he thought he was hiding. 3 other accounts, in different banks, under different names. Investment accounts, savings accounts, even a retirement account he'd never mentioned. Total value, just over $200,000. David had been hiding a fortune while I'd been selling my wedding ring to pay for our son's medicine. I spent the night making phone calls, sending emails, and moving money. By morning, I had David's hidden accounts drained and the money transferred to new accounts in my name only. When David came downstairs, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a stack of bank statements. "Do you have my money?" he asked. "I have your money," I said. "All of it." David looked confused. "All of it." $247,000, I said, spreading out the bank statements. "From all your accounts. The ones you thought I didn't know about." David's face went white. "You can't, those accounts. How did you?" "I've been managing our finances for 2 years, David. You think I didn't notice mysterious automatic deposits, investment statements arriving in your name, the same way you noticed that I was too stupid to let our son die quietly? Rebecca, those accounts are for Emma's future. No, I said, standing up. They were for your escape plan. Your exit strategy for when you got tired of playing house with a woman who was too emotional to let her son die in peace. David stared at the bank statements like they were written in a foreign language. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to call your friends and tell them to bring Emma home immediately. You're going to apologize to her for scaring her. And then you're going to pack your things and leave. You can't kick me out of my own house. Actually, I can. Because this morning I also called a lawyer. Kidnapping your own child is still kidnapping, David. Taking a minor across state lines without the other parent's consent is a federal crime. The FBI is very interested in your parenting decision. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You're bluffing. Am I? The same way I was bluffing about knowing where you hid the money. I pulled out my phone and showed him a text message from my lawyer. FBI contacted. Amber alert ready to issue if Emma not returned by 6 p.m. today. This is insane, David said. You can't. I already did. Turns out federal authorities don't care if you call it a sleepover when you secretly transport a child to another state to extort money from the other parent. David sat down heavily in his chair. For the first time since Ethan's diagnosis, he looked scared. Where's my daughter, David? I can fix this, he said quickly. I can explain to them. Where is my daughter? She's with my cousin Mike in Pennsylvania. But Rebecca, she's fine, Call him. Now. Tell him to bring her home immediately. David's hands were shaking as he dialed his phone. I listened to him mumble explanations and apologies to someone named Mike, watched him promise that everything was fine and just a misunderstanding. He'll have her back by tonight, David said when he hung up. Good. Now pack your bags. Rebecca, we can work this out. We're both grieving. We've both made mistakes. You told me I deserved to watch my son die, I said quietly. You stole money that could have saved his life. You kidnapped my daughter to extort me. There's no working this out. I'm Emma's father. You're a criminal who happens to share DNA with Emma. That's not the same thing as being her father. David stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. When did you become so cold? He asked. When my husband told me I deserved to lose my child, I said. When I realized the man I married had been replaced by someone who could kidnap his own daughter for money. I was trying to protect our family's future. No. You were punishing me for loving our son more than you did. You were punishing me for fighting for him when you'd already given up. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What happens now? Now you leave. Tonight, after Emma is home safe. You take whatever clothes you need and you go stay with Mike, or whoever else will have you. What about visitation? What about my rights? Your rights? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. David, you kidnapped a child. Your rights are whatever a family court judge decides you deserve after they hear about what you did. I'm not signing divorce papers. You don't have to. I'll file, and after 6 months of you refusing to respond, the court will grant me a default divorce. Either way, this marriage is over. You can't raise Emma alone. I won't be alone. I'll have Emma. That's more family than you ever gave me. David stood up slowly. I'll fight you on this. I'll tell everyone you're mentally unstable, that you stole our money, that you're an unfit mother. Go ahead, I said. Tell them. While you're at it, explain why an unfit mother was able to outsmart you so completely. David stared at me with something that might have been respect, or might have been fear. I never knew you could be so ruthless, he said. Neither did I admitted. But you taught me. The night you told me I deserved to lose my son, you taught me that some things are worth being ruthless for. David left the kitchen without another word. Emma came home that evening, confused and tired but unharmed. Mike had told her it was a surprise visit to see her cousins, and she'd had fun playing with their kids. She had no idea she'd been kidnapped. Why did Daddy take me to Uncle Mike's without telling you? She asked as I tucked her into bed. Daddy made a mistake, I said. But he's going to fix it. Is Daddy going away like Ethan did? The question broke my heart. Daddy isn't going to heaven, sweetheart. But he is going to live somewhere else for a while. Because of the mistake. Because Mommy and Daddy need to live apart right now. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Will you go away too?" "Never," I said, kissing her forehead. "I will never, ever leave you. I promise. Even if I make mistakes. Even if you make 1,000,000 mistakes. Even if you're sick, or scared, or sad, or angry. I will always be here. Even if I get sick like Ethan did." I had to take a deep breath before I could answer that one. "Even if you get sick like Ethan did, I will never leave you. I will never give up on you. I will never stop fighting for you. Promise. I promise." Emma fell asleep holding my hand. That was 3 years ago. David moved to Pennsylvania to live with his cousin Mike. He sends Emma a birthday card every year and a Christmas present, but he's never asked for visitation. Never called to talk to her. Never tried to be part of her life. I think he knows that if he tried to get partial custody, I'd make sure every family court judge in the state knew exactly what kind of father he really is. Emma is 9 now. She's smart, funny, and resilient in ways that amaze me every day. She still misses Ethan, but she talks about him easily now, sharing memories and telling new friends about her little brother who's watching us from heaven. She doesn't remember much about the night David took her to Pennsylvania. She remembers it as a fun surprise visit with cousins, and I've never corrected that memory. Someday, when she's older, I'll tell her the truth. But for now, she's allowed to be a kid who doesn't know how dark the world can get. I used David's hidden money to buy us a small house in a good school district. I went back to school myself and got my teaching certificate. Now I teach 2nd grade, and every day I get to see kids Emma's age and Ethan's age learning and growing and being loved. Sometimes parents ask me how I do it, how I can work with young children after losing my son. The answer is that every child I teach is a reminder that love is stronger than loss. That even when the worst things happen, there are still good people in the world who will fight for kids, protect them, and never give up on them. I kept $10,000 of David's money in cash, hidden in a safe deposit box. My emergency fund. My fuck around and find out money, as my sister Patricia calls it. Money that reminds me every day that I am not helpless, not broken, and not someone who could be bullied or manipulated or told I deserved to lose my child. David thought grief had made me weak. He thought losing Ethan had broken me. He was wrong. Losing Ethan broke my heart. But discovering who David really was, that made me strong. Emma and I visit Ethan's grave every month. We bring fresh flowers and tell him about school, about our new house, about the cat we adopted who sleeps on Emma's bed and purrs so loud it sounds like a motorcycle. "I kept Emma safe, buddy," I whisper to his headstone. "Just like you would have done if you were still here." I swear sometimes I can feel him smiling. David taught me that some people will use your love against you. That they'll take your grief and twist it into a weapon. That they'll tell you that your broken heart means you deserve to have it broken. But Emma teaches me every day that love is still worth the risk. That even when people disappoint you, devastate you, or abandon you, there will always be someone worth fighting for. The money David tried to steal from our family now pays for Emma's piano lessons, her soccer cleats, her art supplies, and her college fund. Money he hoarded while our son was dying now gives our daughter opportunities he never bothered to provide. That's not revenge. That's justice. And every time Emma hugs me and says, "I love you, Mommy," I remember why I emptied that bank account in the first place. Not because David told me I deserved to lose my son, but because I deserve to keep my daughter. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of survival and justice. Share your own experiences in the comments. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that we're stronger than we think. Thank you for listening to my story.